Hello, welcome back to GameShock TV. I'm Chris Hewitt, and this is a taste of what's going to be coming out of my mouth over the next 15 minutes. Coming up, Resident Evil gets a makeover and flexes its guns with Operation Raccoon City. There's a new initiate to the stabby parkour trend in Assassin's Creed 3, and all the month's big releases in one handy section. You know, as Spider-Man once never said, with great franchises come great responsibility. Straying from its pant-wetting horror format, Resident Evil. Resident Evil's T-Virus has mutated into a shooter strain, but are the scares still there? We strapped on our most absorbent underwear to find out. Eschewing survival horror for gung-ho bullet spraying, you're back in Raccoon City around games 2 and 3, only this time, you're the bad guys. Choosing from several different classes of Gimp Mask, 4 players, human or computer, run and shoot in various familiar, poorly lit locales. Classic Resident Evil touches are here but drastically watered down to lubricate the faster gameplay. You can at least move and shoot at the same time, but with no direct evade button, self-preservation is nigh on impossible, and once you're locked into an excruciatingly long injury animation, death becomes a welcome relief. Still, at least load times are mercifully quick. Capcom have managed to inject some nifty features into the mix. If you shoot a human opponent, for instance, zombies in the area will swarm with the scent of blood, creating a neat diversion. Upgrades for the characters are imaginative, and multiplayer contains some wacky ways to spice things up, including the option to play as some of the series' big bads. On your own, however, your AI squad mates display the collective intelligence of a watermelon. Since you've no say in what they do, you're entirely at the mercy of their brain-dead ineptitude, as they alternately become far too intimate with your line of sight, or gallop off suicidally into a horde of zombies. Bad move. With no real stealth mode, the famous atmospherics are degraded into brutally unforgiving difficulty spikes and pitch-black rooms where it's impossible to see what you're shooting at. Whereas Left 4 Dead could rely on its survival aspect to generate scares, there's very little tension to controlling a group of hard bastards armed to the teeth with explosive devices. Well, not quite to the teeth. Ammo is limited but almost entirely flaccid, meaning most of it will be sucked up by impervious enemies. Even headshots take a few rounds to do the job. The potential was there for some novel reinvention, but the whole game is tragically infected by its diseased core. Every decent idea fed into the title is vomited straight back out again, leaving a jumble of largely undigested concepts struggling to stay afloat in an otherwise unappetizing mess. Devotees may find joy in its interweaving stories and nostalgic cameos, not least a chance to finally bump off some of the series' lank-haired pretty boys. But diehards will be hit most by the change of genre. A middling shooter on its own terms, ultimately the game most closely resembles its famous zombie antagonists, a dim-witted, shambling shell of its former self. After a seemingly never-ending stream of number 2s, not a medical condition I hasten to add, history's most lethal hoodie is back in Assassin's Creed 3, the 5th game in the Assassin's Creed franchise. Anyway, this time he's got an all-new era to terrorize, so Steve Hill hopped inside his Animus to find out more.
It was definitely time for a clean break with the series. After the Ezio trilogy, we felt that we owed our fans true innovation. We owed them a new era, a new hero, new historical characters, new types of gameplay, new challenges, so that's entirely what we went for. You need to understand this is a very different Assassins. This isn't just another year. This game has been in development well over 2 years, and it's still a few months from release, so we're putting a lot of effort. So the setting in this new Assassin's 3 is the American Revolution. Obviously, we don't pick these settings out of a hat, so we obsess on them, we paranoid on them. We're like, is this the best setting for Assassins? We did months of research. What historical characters are fun to play with? We obviously have the Ben Franklins, the George Washingtons, we have it's one of the best documented periods in history. We know on a week-to-week basis where all these key characters were. Connor, who's a brand new assassin. He is half Brit, half Mohawk. It's also interesting there what we can do with the duality of who the character is. It means that he fights for justice. Where Altair was all about duty, Ezio was all about revenge. We now have a character who's solely dedicated to justice and the image of the American Indians in the new world that they're creating. So I think Connor is also going to be a a new taste for players. We are doing a lot more with two-handed combat, for one. So he starts with the tomahawk and a knife. We are also exploring things like the bow because of his heritage. So that's also a good compromise between short and long range. We obviously have muskets, and muskets are extremely interesting because actually what we found picking the American Revolution is that I think one of the reasons that this is an untapped period of history in gaming in general is that because a shooter cannot create a game where it takes a minute to reload a musket. We're obviously taking liberties with that. We're exaggerating history in that instance, and we're making the reload time shorter. But there, it allows us to do a lot of interesting things, even with combat. We like to think that Assassins is one of those games where you play it and you learn something. Ultimately, my dream is that you're playing Assassins, your third arm is wikiing, and your wife is planning a trip to whatever location you're playing with because you've done such a good job at exciting people at it.
The world of commerce has declared open war on your wallet this month with a string of high-profile games baying for your attention like a group of money-stealing babies. Slightly disturbing metaphors aside, here's a roundup of the best spring releases. The latest in Capcom's thumb-curdling license mashup sees Ryu and co. tag team with the Tekken gang. As with Marvel vs. Capcom, combat is super slick and graphics bulge with stylish detail, all slathered in thick layers of loving polish. Nice. Faster than its forebears, but not as manic as its Marvel sibling, Street Fighter Cross Tekken opts out of near-lethal sensory overload in favour of a more tactical arena with some impressive innovations. These new strands of DNA make substantial waves in the gene pool without compromising the pedigree of either franchise. One such option allows you to sacrifice a character in order to give your teammate a 10-second power boost, following which either you or your opponent will lie defeated in a colourful heap of shame and self-loathing. Gem slots add extra attributes to your characters without unbalancing play too much, and the 4-player co-op mode takes full advantage of its considerable strengths. Capcom's genetic splicing has given birth to a tight, muscular offspring full of depth, approachability and creativity, far from the kind of pale clone you might expect. Anyone hankering for a good old beat-em-up will find themselves pleasantly surprised by a deep playing experience that can stand proudly alongside its prestigious ancestors. Plus, it has fart jokes. Reformatted from a 90s top-down strategy fest into a chart-seducing first-person shooter, it's no surprise a Syndicate has some identity issues. Set in an all-but-inevitable Blade Runner-style future, the world is demarcated not into countries, but conglomerates, with intercorporate espionage the new form of warfare. As a company operative, your interrogation by bullet approach to fact-finding uncovers multiple shady plot devices, involving a genericized Rosario Dawson and a frankly uncanny Brian Cox. No, not that one. Yes, the other one. Yes, him. From setting to execution, it plays like a hypercharged Deus Ex Revolution, even down to the player abilities that serve as power-ups. Ranging from weapon backfires to suicide by spontaneous combustion, augmentations are not short on gore or imagination and prove to be a standout mechanic in an otherwise mechanical shooter. The graphics have a pleasant sheen to them, spilling into a rather less pleasant obsession with lighting glares and foggy lenses. Shooting is tight and occasionally inventive, with some great co-op multiplayer on offer. For fans of futuristic sci-fi shooters, this is a thoroughly enjoyable addition to your post-Mass Effect list. With an almost Stalinist revision of history, EA Sports, perhaps wisely, has elected to overlook the previous 3 installments of FIFA Street and rebooted, pun intended, the series with the cunningly named FIFA Street. As before, it involves an array of global stars improbably playing on impromptu urban pitches that would definitely result in a turned ankle or bruised metatarsal. Football strategy is overlooked in favour of outlandish tricks and flicks, and in a move that can only be deemed as progress, unlike the previous FIFA Streets, this one isn't absolute garbage. Stuart Downing need not apply. Let's be honest, the Silent Hill series has gone downhill since development shifted from its native Japan to random Western-based studios. Charting the exploits of an escaped prisoner who stumbles upon the titular ghost town, Downpour fails to buck the trend, featuring ponderous puzzles and lacking the creeping dread that made the original survival horror games so bed-soilingly terrifying. More authentic thrills may be found on the forthcoming HD collection, featuring remastered versions of Silent Hills 2 and 3. Flight sims might be about as fashionable as doing a Rubik's Cube while drinking a can of Quattro, but with the recent release of Microsoft Flight followed by this World War II-based affair, could a comeback be on the cards? Probably not. But Birds of Steel is passable enough in a stiff upper lip jocks away style, but simultaneously lacks both the intricacies demanded by simulation fans and the instant thrills required by action junkies. A largely pensive affair, it mainly consists of flying somewhere, shooting something, and then having a history lesson from Stephen Fry. Yes, Stephen Fry. Apparently he's on Twitter, you know. For those who found Transformers a touch on the quiet side, the Armored Core series returns with its uniquely bombastic take on the admittedly niche giant robot genre. Grittier than its predecessor, there's a story in there somewhere, but unraveling that story is only marginally less complex in the convoluted interface. The online aspect has been amped up, with a Risk-style territorial element requiring you to team up with strangers and declare war on other strangers. One day, all wars will be fought like this. And that's literally all we got time for this month, and I mean literally, we've got like 5 seconds. So next month, more me, more games, more time. Goodbye! That was way more than 5 seconds.